Hello, everyone. Thank you, and I apologize for the delay. I wanted to thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and welcome to today's Insider session on how to raise to the challenge and inspire others with Elsa Velasco Paul. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and within a few days, you will receive an email with both the slides and this recording. You can ask any question using the Q&A box on the screen, and also answer as many questions as she can during the presentation. My name is Michelle, and I oversee the education and professional certification products and services at the IEEE Computer Society. Our Insider session offers an essential business skills designed to help you excel in your current role and support your career growth. Again, joining us today is Elsa Velasco Paul, a seasonal entrepreneur and co-founder of the M&E Group, LLC, a client success firm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, established in 1997. With over 2 decades of experience, she specializes in process improvement and strategic implementation across various industries, including retail, oil and gas, and nonprofit. Elsa employs a hands-on, experimental leading approach to help business enhance client acquisitions, optimize sales, and drive revenue growth. As a sought-after consultant and keynote speaker, she shares her insights on persuasive communication, change management, design thinking, branding, and leadership. In addition to her consulting work, Elsa co-founded the Seven Doors Project, inspired by her journey of escaping political prosecution in Venezuela and starting anew in America. Elsa values thoughtfulness, compassion, grit, and her faith in God. She is passionate about continuous learning and emerging technologies like blockchain and AI, and enjoys reading, coffee, and science fiction. Elsa, a proud mom of 4 and a dog lover, has made Tulsa her home since 2007. That being said, Elsa, thank you for presenting today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome aboard, everybody. This is probably going to be one of your favorite sessions because we have tailored this to be specific to application forward. So let's get right to it. Like Michelle said, welcome aboard to This is your Rising to the Challenge, and we're going to learn how to lead through change. My name is Elsa Velasco Paul, and I am the co-founder of the M&E Group, and it's super wonderful to be and to share this time and space with you. This is all possible thanks to a fantastic partnership, Michelle. I think it's 6 years now with your professional society, the Computer Society. I am very excited to work again with IEEE, the Computer Society. So thank you to the incredible team, Michelle, Scott, Eric. You guys make this partnership so easy. Now, I don't want to forget the other side of the co-founder from the M&E Group. His name is Michael Paul, and he is the strategist extraordinaire. You want to say hi, Mike?
Hello, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. And Mike is going to be in charge, like Michelle said, of all the questions. So do not wait until the end. As you get any questions, especially if they are applicable to your work or to your circumstances, put them there in the chat. Michelle and Michael are going to do a fantastic job at putting them through the session so that we answer and we help you in your journey. Now, before we start, I want to talk about the 1940s. Let's go to the next screen. Think about this. It's the 1940s and it's Bell Labs. There's this young engineer named Claude Shannon, and he's stuck pretty much. They've given him what seemed like a really impossible problem. They said, hey, how do you send clear telephone conversations across noisy, super unreliable networks and unreliable networks that were spanning thousands and thousands of miles? What was happening was that every message would get corrupted, every single was getting degraded, and the further the distance, you got it, the worse it got. Here's the frustrating part. The harder that they tried to force clarity throughout the whole system, the worse it got. It felt a little bit like pushing water through a clogged pipe. More pressure just created more problems. Well, in the next slide, we're going to talk about what he called the useless machine. And you probably felt this. How many times has your change message got more distorted the harder that you push, the more that you talk about it, the more that you seemingly annoy people. That's what we're going to talk about today. This uses machine that Claude was talking about, Shannon was talking about, came because he was obsessed with building better hardware. That's what his colleagues were doing, and that was the norm. Stronger amplifiers, cleaner circuits, and better materials, as you can guess. They were working really hard trying to eliminate every source of interference through hardware. But Shannon had a completely different idea. He thought, wait a minute, what if the problem wasn't the noise in itself? What if the problem was that they didn't fundamentally understand what noise was? So while all his colleagues were working on bigger amplifiers, bigger hardware, Shannon was quietly building something that his colleagues called, quote unquote, useless. He built a machine that deliberately added more noise to the signals, and then he measured to see what happened. His supervisor even told him, hey, stop, you're wasting time on this noise machine. Can you imagine putting yourself in his shoes, being told that what you believe is your breakthrough is useless? That had to be heart-wrenching. Well, let's move to the next slide. And here we're going to talk about exactly why this matters to you. How many of you have felt like Shannon? You're trying to be changing your organization. You're pushing your message. You're devising different ways that you can get it across, but it doesn't matter. No matter how hard you push, the more distorted it becomes. Yes. Now, the problem is messages get corrupted, the signal gets degraded, and the worse, the harder that you push, the worse that it gets. Now, let's talk about Shannon's breakthrough and how this relates to your organization. Here's the thing. Shannon's breakthrough wasn't just about the whole telephone networks. That's just the intro. He discovered the fundamental laws governing all information transmission, not just telephone wires or radio signals. But here's where it got really interesting. Any system where information needs to travel through noise. And we're going to talk about noise today. And that includes organizations. Today, we're going to apply Shannon's principles and the very same principles that built the internet, enable your smartphone, empower every single piece of digital communication that we use nowadays. And it goes from the most complex to the simplest that we have. And it ends with leading change in your organization. You're about to see the whole tool, the same tools that he used to solve this impossible problem in the communication process. So let's dive in. Let's talk about the entropy challenge. Let's go to the next slide. So Shannon discovered that instead of going top to bottom, he had to start by identifying what is the vision, then apply the principles so that he could identify the laws that applied. And that's what made it very different. While others were working on hardware, he decided to go to the basic principles. Let's check on the next slide and talk about what happens when you apply that to your real world. Let me start with my personal story and why I'm talking about this today. I'm a senior marketing manager, and I've lived in this whole world of signal, quote unquote, noise every single day. By definition, that is my job. My whole career since 19, which I'm not going to tell you, has been in marketing leadership. And it's actually built on what Claude Shannon was trying to solve way back in the 1940s. And no, wise guys, I am not from the 1940s. The question is, how do you get a clear message through a noisy environment? Every single day, my job is one, identifying opportunities that are buried deep in any of the market noises. I'm trying to spot any gaps where the competitor signals are weak or non-existent, recognizing those challenges so that I can do something about it. And then, very important, catching those red flags, because if I miss it, then the message is not going to go through. That is the core of marketing and communication. And it taught me that managing information in noisy systems like the ones that you and I live in isn't just a technical problem, it's a leadership challenge. And here's what I've learned: the best marketing strategies in the world, the best communication strategies in the world will fail if you can't lead your team through the noise to execute them. Now, think of your most recent initiative. Probably it's a new project that you're involved in, or it's part of your daily work, but you require the support of others. How clearly is your vision understood today versus the very first moment when you announced it? And there will probably be three different options. I will ask you to put it there in the chat as we go forward. Think about those initiatives and then tell us from the very beginning to now, is it still very clear? As in, all the participants are informed, they know exactly what to do, and they're participating in every meeting, they are contributing. Or since the beginning to now, it's degrading a little bit. It's somewhat clear. It's a bit different from what you introduced. And you see the participants, they start to get hesitant. They're not asking questions, and they're actually requiring their managers to initiate the tasks. There are not a lot of leaders, there's more followers. Or number three, it's very unclear. What you presented to today has nothing to do. Participants now need to be urged to attend the meetings. You have to follow up. And honestly, it's starting to get old in regards to the excitement that happened at the very beginning. Well, that is exactly what happened with our everyday challenges. Let's check on the next slide. What you witness in this case, where you started with one message and you're going to a second message, is entropy in action. So in this case, if we can't maintain this signal clarity in 10, 15 words chat, imagine what happens when you have a whole project that spans beyond just a day. It goes for a week, it goes for a month, it goes for a year. How much do you think that that clear vision that you started with becomes a degraded signal? Let's talk about this. And I want to know, how do you handle this? Michelle, is this a good time to put up the questions for the poll?
Sure, I can do that.
Great. I want to know about you guys. So first, how do you typically communicate any urgent message? And there's different options. There can be email, Slack, Teams, what have you, meetings, or all of the above. And it's perfectly fine if you select all of the above. Again, how do you typically communicate any urgent changes that you have to apply? You do that via email, or you go through Slack or Teams, or you go through meetings. You call a meeting and then you start talking to people, or you do all of them all at once. This is a good mix. Great job. Very good. Very good. I see some meetings. Very good. And other, that is fantastic. Okay, I love this because it's pretty well spread out. Now, let's talk about number 2. How many different communication channels do you typically use for one, let's call that latest change initiative that you have? And it can be, if it's a very important change initiative, I'm going to use one communication channel. So that can be 1 to 2. I'll stick to email and Teams, for example. Or I use many. I go from 3 to 4 different channels, and that can be face-to-face meetings, that can be going online, that can be giving pamphlets, giving material, or you go 5 to 6, or even more than 6. Oh, good job. Okay, I see lots in the 3 level. Perfect. I'd love to know if there's anything else besides Teams or besides Slack or any of these that we mentioned that you are using, because more than likely, if you guys are liking it, pretty much the folks that are attending here will like it too. Now let's bring this home. What you just identified if you're using more than 4 to 5 channels, what might be happening is you're exceeding your audience's capacity to track and integrate information. Because it's not only about how we send the information, it's the capacity that your listener can track and integrate that information into something useful. What happens is that more isn't always better. You've just identified the potential channel overload that we have in many organizations. And this might be one of the many reasons why your messages aren't landing. It's not because the people don't care, they do, but it's because you are pretty much clogging the channel's capacity. And that happens more than you think. Let's see on the next slide, and let's talk about the dual role that you and I play. Okay, let's go to the next one. We probably think that this is part of the marketing team or the leadership team. I think we need to reframe this. All day long, you all play this dual role constantly. And it is the role of producing information, like when you call the meeting, when you have a one-on-one with one of your coworkers, when you send an email asking for more information. But you also receive information that you need to decode accurately according to your needs and according to your capacity. That's usually to understand the direction, to follow the strategy, to process even feedback that we're giving after we presented information. The difference between successful professionals and struggling ones often comes down to how well they manage this area, the dual role, or how well they handle signal and noise. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Let's go to the next slide. Entropy is interesting, but it's very natural. In physics, entropy is nothing more than the natural tendencies of systems, any type of system, to drift towards disorder. Organizations, even systems like in our homes, with our friendships at work, they do the exact same thing. Let's think about this. Your change initiative starts absolutely 100% crystal clear. Day one, everybody gets it. They're reading the memos. People are participating. It's wonderful. You present the vision. Everybody nods. Yay. Energy is high. Clarity, 100%. But then life happens. And then entropy starts working against you. Some meetings get missed. Now 3 people have different versions of the plan. And then there's conflicting priorities, right? I have my day job, quote unquote. And suddenly your initiative starts to compete with 5 different initiatives. And then even more importantly, the roles become unclear. There's a lot of work that gets duplicated, or worse. And unfortunately, what happens a lot, nothing gets done because people don't know what they're supposed to be doing. This isn't resistance. Again, this isn't people trying to be difficult or to make your life miserable. They're not even uncommitted. This is just nature. Systems drift towards disorder unless, and this is the key, energy is constantly applied to maintain this order. As a senior marketing manager, I see this play out constantly, every single day. We launch a campaign, beautiful alignment, but unless we stay on it every single day, hearing and producing information, same thing is going to happen. We're going to have different campaigns, different interpretations, and different results. And often they're not going to be what we want. Entropy is working against you right now in every change initiative you're leading. The question is, are you fighting back? Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tactics, like we said at the very beginning, that will make this easier for you to understand. The first one is the signal design. And this is one of my favorite tactics. I call it the 3, 7, and 1. And the reason why I love it very, very much is because it's very easy and it's very memorable. So the first thing that you start is 1. To fight entropy, you don't have to be working harder, and you're not going to be sending more emails or pricing more meetings. You're going to be working smarter with the same systems that Shannon would be able to recognize. So my systems that I use is one, the 3-layered message test. This one says you're sending your message through 3 different organizational levels, and then you measure the degradation. And this is great because it allows for you to plan and to identify where you have those weak spots. So it's what did you say, and what did your direct report hear, and what did their direct report hear. I think it's key to do this pretty much if you have any initiative that is going to span more than a month or two, to do this religiously every single week. Because what will happen is these random check-ins with individual contributors, it's going to allow you to understand the disconnect. And the disconnect tells you exactly where your signal is breaking down. Because remember, you can't fix what you can't measure. The second thing that happens a lot is this weekly signal decays the audits. So don't wait again until week 12 or until the end of the project when you have to present your results to discover that your message has degraded. We already said that it will degrade. Every week, sample a few people at different levels, even folks that didn't start with you in the program, and ask them to explain the change back to you. Don't ask them, hey, what do you think about the project? Ask them, how would you explain what you were involved in? And then track how this clarity evolves over time. What you're doing is you're building a diagnostic system. This is probably very common for you guys. And that is number 2, how I rise to the challenge of keeping 30 or plus people aligned on very complex strategies that we have. Another one that I really, really like is the energy injection scheduling. And this one is a little bit different. I think it's my critical one. I don't wait for entropy to win. I know that it's always going against me. I schedule regular messages to boost before this natural decay kicks in. I believe in prevention, not reaction. So I have these recurring calendar holds, and it's every 2 weeks, and I do them standing so that nobody gets too comfortable and they just start to talk more than it's necessary. And I deliberately re-communicate the key priorities. It's interesting. It takes you at least 7 times to hear the same message to make it familiar. And it's not because people forget. It's because, again, entropy is always working and it's very efficient. And number 4, it's structural redundancy. We're going to send the same message that we talked about before, but now we're going to do different or multiple pathways, like when we talked about Slack or Teams or face-to-face meetings, formal meetings and informal conversations and visual artifacts and documentation. Why is this important? Because let's say that your formal meeting fails. Well, your informal conversations, your visual artifacts, and your documentation should survive. I think it's key that we never rely on a single all-hands meeting to communicate any strategy or any initiative. The same message goes out in, for example, in a Teams meeting, in a follow-up email with visuals, in a team summary, in one-on-one conversations, and I ended up with a documented strategy brief. Now, one of my favorite tactics that I have is the 3-7-1 that we talked about here. It's very, very simple. It starts with 3 key points to the maximum. Again, we talked that there's a lot of information going out there that shouldn't be. And the way to keep that at a minimum or to keep us honest is by making sure that the human brain is able to receive all this information. When we say 3 key points, it's not 5, it's not 10, it's only 3. Human brains chunk information in 3s. Research proves it, and I can share that research with you afterwards. Experience confirms that this still holds true. So when I brief executives or anybody from my team or even from cross-departmental initiatives, I force myself to distill everything into 3 core points. If I can't, I need to go back to the drawing board and get that work distilled into only 3 points, because that is what's memorable. Now, the 7 in the 3-7-1 is 7 words or less per every point that we're presenting. And this isn't about quote unquote dumbing down. I really don't like that word because it's not good and it's not accurate. It's about clarity through discipline. And we're hearing this discipline word again. If you can't say it in 7 words, go back to the drawing board. You haven't distilled it enough. Every major campaign that you should do should have the first of the 3 key points and then the 7 words or less to articulate what is the key benefits, not the features, but the benefits. What are they going to get because they are participating? What this does, it forces you to be precise. And then the 1 is to make this something they will remember. So you create a memorable metaphor. It's something that sticks. It's an image that they can go back to and link it with your project. Usually it's something that people can visualize or they can repeat without the notes. So, for example, one of our recent product launches said, we are working with speed, quality, and collaboration, like a relay race. We win together. We are tying the product that we're creating with a relay race because people understand that there's partnership and that we win together. It's simple, it's memorable, and it's repeatable because most people understand what a relay race is all about. That, my friends, is signal design. When you architect your messages this way, they survive transmission through multiple layers of your organization. And this is how you rise to the challenge of being heard in noisy environments, not by saying more, but by engineering what you say to be unforgettable, like the song. Michelle, let's go to the next slide and talk about redundant encoding. Redundant encoding is number 2. And this one is another critical technique. This one comes straight out of any communications playbook. Redundant encoding talks about expressing the same core idea that we talked about through multiple channels. And it's not because it's repetitive, but it's because we said this a little bit before at the beginning. Different people process information differently. It just is. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. The logic way to present it says, this reduces cost by 30%. This is a great way to present the information for all of you analytical thinkers, the engineers, the finance folks, the ones who loves the numbers, and you don't want a lot of words. Perfect. That's a good metaphor to add in there. But then you have the other folks that like a little bit more emotion, a story in there. So you say, this means job security for the team. This one motivates impact, people. It involves the human side. So you have your second group involved. And then for the visual group, you need to create, again, something that connects, that is memorable. So show this same data in a graphic form that is easy to understand. Your visual processors will love to see this because when they see it, they believe it. Now, notice what's happening here. The message is the same. The encoding changes based on how many different people are processing the information. And this is exactly what people in communications do every single day, especially when you're helping your team go to different changes or different initiatives. The same product benefit feature gets encoded differently for different audiences. Technical specs for engineers, for example, ROI calculations for executives or for the folks in finance, user testimonials for operations teams, and then some visual demos for creative folks. So you're thinking, well, Elsa, this is fine and dandy if you're in marketing. Not so fast, my friend. Remember, you are customers of each other. So when you are presenting a project, think of your audience as your customer, exactly like a campaign. When I launch a major change initiative, I never announce it in just one way. It's a sure way for it to be forgotten as fast as I present it. I engineer multiple encodings of the same core message. And this is how you rise to the challenge of reaching diverse audiences. You're not changing what you're saying. you change how you encode it. And that's the difference between a message that reaches 20% of your audience versus one that reaches 80% of your audience. Let's talk about the third one. In the next slide, let's talk about channel management. The third way that we rise to the challenge is strategic channel management. It's understanding, whereas in the other one is presenting it in different forms, this is understanding where your messages travel. And once you understand where, you're going to optimize these pathways. This is critical. And most leaders, they get it completely wrong. One, because every communication channel has a maximum information capacity. After that, there's overload and the information does not get, it just isn't able to be processed. And then as much as you get closer to that overload, the effectiveness goes down significantly. So what is key for you when you're presenting your initiative? You need to know when you're approaching this channel capacity. And I think this is the toughest part. We need to start exercising the discipline to stop before we exceed it. Let's see in the next slide and talk about Shannon's theorem, because this is going to ground it a little bit for you. Instead of relying on a single path, what you're doing is you're building a mesh, a net of sorts. So what you're doing is you're training multiple people that can relay your message accurately. Shannon presented something that was profound for every marketing leader, for anybody actually who's in leadership or communication for that sense. Every communication channel has a maximum information capacity. It's like that bandwidth that we were talking about before. You can only push as much data through it before you get errors, before it gets completely degraded. In organizations, your home, your work, school, even friendships, they work exactly the same way. Every channel, and we said emails, meetings, Slack, Teams, town halls, they have a maximum capacity. You exceed it, noise increases, errors multiply, and comprehension plummets. Different channels have different capacities according to the different types of information, and they fit better in one or the other. And here's the counterintuitive part that it took me a while to get. Information overload actually reduces effectiveness. So this is a case that more communication isn't always better. Sometimes it's actively worse. And I learned this the hard way. The more meetings that I set up just for the sake of meetings, the worse that participation get. What I was creating at the very beginning of my career is noise. I wasn't helping people get the message. I could repeat it ad nauseum 3 times a day. But if the initial message wasn't clear enough, wasn't connected enough, and wasn't important enough, it didn't matter. We've all experienced this. How many of you have 25 emails about the same topic from different types, from different pathways, but you have no clue what they want because there's no clarity? What they're doing is they're competing against each other and they're creating confusion. And this confusion creates what we call the inbox paralysis. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that has a ton of emails there that are waiting for response because I get overwhelmed when I see the huge number that I have there. Now, this is that challenge that we talked about. This is what we need to rise to. We need to know when we're approaching it and then have the discipline immediately to change. The best way to do that is through this mesh network approach. So, number one, you train multiple people that have some foreign investment in the project. And then you're going to, one, identify what we call those natural amplifiers in your organization. We all know who those folks are. And be careful. It's not necessarily the ones who have the leadership title, quote unquote. There are people that, for example, one, they communicate very well, clearly. People usually like to have them in their teams. They gravitate towards them. or when there's an issue, people gravitate towards them to get an explanation of what's going on. Others naturally trust and they listen to. If there's a meeting and they start speaking, you see that all the heads turn. That is a way to understand, oh, that's a natural amplifier. And more importantly than anything, they have influence across silos. And it doesn't matter, maybe they don't have the title, but they are able to get cooperation not only in their department, but across different departments. The second step is to train these same natural amplifiers to retransmit that message without adding their own distortion. This is tricky, I have to be honest. People will want to amplify. They will want to interpret and add their own mix, their own way of saying it. That's when the message gets distorted. What you're asking is for people to amplify, no interpretation needed. You don't want them to add their spin. You don't want them to change the encoding. So the way to do that is you explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how, so that they can explain it to others. And then the third one is going to the pathways. We want to create these redundant pathways especially for those critical message. Again, if one path fails, for example, the big meeting that you put together, or somebody is sick or changes roles or goes to a different company, others can carry the signal and the project doesn't get stalled. This is exactly, for example, how the internet and other communications pathways follow. Multiple paths for every single destination. Resilience against failures. Boom. Your organization communication should work the same way. Notice that I said should. This is how you rise to the challenge of scale. I know that you're very, very effective, but you can't personally reach everyone. But you can build a network of trusted repeaters who extend that. And that is not delegation, it's amplification. Now, let's go to the next slide and talk about signal boosters, one of my favorites. A signal booster is exactly that. It is the person that enhances communication through clarity, understands interference, and creates resonance. And that is what great leaders, regardless of them having the title, get to do in an organization. They understand the message, they are able to understand what are the issues that are going to have with noise, and then they are able to create resonance so that that message becomes grassroots. In the next slide, I want to talk about the efficient information transfer. This is something that a lot of people get wrong about inspiration. We think that inspiration is this higher ideal, very ethereal. It's really not. Inspiration isn't magic. It's efficient information transfer. You have to have maximum fidelity. Your messages reaches others. It has to with minimum distortion. We talked about that. It has to create resonance. Remember, we talked in the previous slide. Your signal frequency has to match what others can receive. It's more or less, it's going to be ineffective. And then very key, you want to turn these followers into repeaters because you can't be everywhere. So this strengthens rather than degrades your message. When people say that something is inspiring, what they're really saying is that person's signal is so clear and so well designed that it reaches me without degradation. And more importantly, I want to amplify it. Now, let's move to the next one and talk about Shannon's theory. He talked about a couple of things. He talked about the countering entropy increase, creating those self-reinforcing loops, and ensuring that you have persistent signal strength. I believe that his power was that when Shannon created his quote-unquote useless machine, although everybody was skeptical of these 3 points, he called it the most important theoretical work in the company's history. His mathematical frameworks transform how I believe, how we understand communication. And I I bet he didn't know that it was going to impact so many different areas of communication. Today, I know that you guys experience this. Every text message, every video call in data transmission uses Shannon's principles. His insights about signal integrity, error correction, they have built the digital world, but more importantly, they are key and pivotal in communication. Companies that apply this information theory to organizational change, from Google's way to Netflix's, these are the companies that consistently outperform traditional change management approaches because it works. Let's go to the next slide and talk about the application tips. And I want you to bring this to ideas in your home. Think of someone in your organization that you consider inspires by change, and write it down so that you have a signal. What specifically behaviors do they show? Write them down and then keep them in the front and center. That way, whenever you need to present information, you know what type of behaviors you want to amplify. All right, in the next slide, we'll talk about the information success story. Shannon did amazing. He went from historical impact to modern success. And probably the best thing that we learn is that his way of working applies in organizational theory. It applies actually in personal theory, but more importantly, it applies in the way that we handle communication. You have these tools now. You understand entropy. You know how to design signals that survive, and you know how to manage channels. You now know how to even build these mesh of networks of amplifier. Now, the question is, in the next slide, what will you do with this? It's not whether you can lead successful change. We know you can. The question is, what signal are you going to choose to amplify? In the next slide, let's bring this home. What did we learn today? Well, we learned a lot about entropy and disorder, and we know that people don't really hate us. It's just physics. We learned the wonderful theory of the 3-7-1. We learned that all of us have that dual role. We produce and we receive information. And we now understand that there's a capacity limit that we need to be cognizant and handle very, very well. We now know that leaders like you understand and distinguish between resistance, that's understand, but you disagree, and noise. Noise is when there's confusion because it's poor transmission, but there's no unwillingness to cooperate. And then this sustainable inspiration really requires building self-reinforcing systems and discipline. And one of my favorite things, modern organizations apply information theory principles to change management every single day. Now you guys have a wonderful toolkit of a lot of information from Shannon. You have anything that you need, and as usual, please let me know if there's anything that I can help you through my LinkedIn, because our goal is to help you be even better professionals than you already are. Thanks for being here today. I hope Shannon's story and all these tools that we talked about today help you rise to whatever challenge you are facing today. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Elsa. I don't see any questions, Elsa. Would you like to wait like about a minute to see if anybody has any questions?
Absolutely. I will always wait for my audience.
Okay, excellent.
And while we wait, one of the things that I wanted to share, I promised some books and I will deliver. One of my favorite books is, if you have a chance, it's called The Innovator's Method. And if you need the whole list, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Very, very important. If you want some ideas of what tools to apply to get your connections, your information better, this is key. It's called Thinker Toys. It's one single word, Thinker Toys. And it is a whole book, I think 200 pages or so, of active applications in different tactics that you can apply to present different ideas in your organization. And I really, really like Adam Grant's work. specifically Originals and Think Again. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Creativity Inc. The folks from Pixar did a phenomenal job in presenting how they wanted information to flow freely. More to come, so connect with me on LinkedIn and I can give you the whole list.
Great. Just one question that came in. There were Cosme. I just wanted to mention that you will be receiving this slide and recording, and I'll mention that after my closing.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
other than that, there's no other question. Elsa, do you want to wrap it up? I think we could do that.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before, I am always excited to work with you folks. So please connect with us, Elsa Velasco Paul, on LinkedIn if you want more information. And you will, like Michelle said, you will get a copy of this, which is another reason why definitely you want to stay connected with the Computer Society, because where else do you get this type of information? This is some of our latest research, but as we get more information, we will share it with you on LinkedIn. We're always happy to make sure that my favorite people from the Computer Society stay at the latest research. Thank you, everybody. Have a phenomenal Wednesday.
Great. Thank you, Elsa, and thank you everyone for participating on this webinar. I do want to mention that we have additional free sessions coming up over the next few weeks. October 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. This could be a webinar on next generation Wi-Fi positioning. October 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, it'll be on driving the future of safety in autonomous mobility with IEEE P2851. Again, registration for these upcoming events is now open. We will be sending you a link to these future events along with the slides and the recording of this webinar. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.